you so much for joining me on the Creative Awakening Now podcast. I'm your host, David Matters, and I'm here to bring you stories, interviews, and insights relating to the topics of creativity, inspiration, and practice. My intention is to connect with other people who employ a heart-centered approach to the artistic process and to share this profoundly inspiring content with anyone who cares to hear it. I hope you enjoy. This is a dream, and a dream is never the same. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Creative Awakening Now podcast. As usual, I'm your host, David Matters. And this week, having another solo episode. It's been a couple weeks since I've done this. I like to do it every, 2 or 3 weeks or so in between interviews. It gives me a time to kind of put my own 2 cents into the whole process and show that I'm being involved in my own personal way. And every week I try and address a different topic, share something. This week I had a bunch of stuff that I want to talk about, but just like, I don't know, when I sat down like minutes ago, I was like, man, I really don't actually know what I want to talk about. I have a couple different things in mind, but I think I'm going to go towards the topic of community. And both community in the sense of building community and also providing community. And the reason this is coming up for me is, first of all, because I've been playing a ton of music lately with my band Life Like Water, and I've also been setting up a bunch of solo gigs for myself. Life Like Water is all my music, but I have bandmates that play, and they're amazing, and it's awesome, and it totally makes this music, but it's also like, in a way, it kind of, having a band behind you there's so much cushion, there's so much room for you to kind of just skirt on by. And the vulnerability of just putting yourself out there solo is, there's so much more to it. And I wanted to push myself. I wanted to remind myself that I could do it. I used to play solo a lot, but it's been a number of years since I've got into it in any serious sense. So I wanted to push myself, and also I needed more gigs just personally, just to get my music out there, and also to make some money on the side. Playing with bands, it's always hard to actually cash in on it. So there's a number of reasons of it, but yeah, I've been connecting with musicians a lot, and a lot of that's been through this podcast, which has been beautiful, and making friends and building community. And I believe last week I mentioned that I'm doing a show Tuesday, April 16th at the Mothlight in Asheville with my friends Forrest Bailey and Mark Hennessy. Mark Hennessy's plays under the name To All My Dear Friends. And I met both of them through the podcast. Didn't know either one of them beforehand, but I loved their music as soon as I heard it, and immediately felt a connection with them, just as people. And as soon as we started chatting, both of them, it was like, oh yeah, this is a good thing we got going here, and we should pursue it. That making community, and in this game, in the creative world, whether it's music or it's art or it's performance or dance or whatever it is, there's a big element of your own personal effort, your own solo endeavor, where you got to put in the hours and you got to really go for it by yourself. You got a woodshed, whether you're learning an instrument or you're learning that dance move or brush strokes. Like, you really have to just kind of seclude yourself from everyone else and put in that time. But once you've done that, connecting with other people is huge. It's a huge part of this whole game that we're playing. And if you can't do that, or if you haven't done it, or if you don't know how to do it, it's really limiting. I've seen it personally, and I've so many people that I've talked to have this to say about it, that making those connections, making those friendships, finding those people who inspire you, push you, and drive you, it means everything. And I know for me personally, when I was playing music a lot, especially in the days when I was traveling, hitchhiking around, I was playing music with other people, a couple friends I was traveling with, and also just kind of jamming here and there. But for the large part, I was doing a lot of solo stuff, and it was wonderful. But because of the seclusion of being on the road, aside from the random jam I would have every now and then, it was a lot of just writing, which was beautiful, but I wasn't really progressing. I wasn't pushing myself beyond my comfort zone. And that's fine. That was a time and place in my life. But as soon as I moved to Boulder back in 2012 when I got off the road, and I started going to Naropa, and then I formed my old band Gypsy Moon with some amazing musicians. Yeah. Uh, as soon as I started doing that, I found myself um, two things. I was building this community, but I was also being pushed more and more to learn new stuff. These other people I was playing with, I was either greatly inspired by them and wanted to do more, or I was trying to collaborate and needed to, expand my horizons. And some of it was also like, oh man, I'm just not good enough. Like playing with these other people who are amazing, I need to up my game. And that really, really pushed me beyond anything I would have done on my own, because you get in this comfort zone, you get in this groove, you're like, yeah, I'm good enough. I can write these songs. I have this thing that I stick to. I have this format. I have these chords. I have this progression. I have this strumming pattern, whatever. I'm speaking in musical terms because that's what it is for me, but, fill in the blanks for yourself. Um, and it's really easy to get to stay in that rut. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I am going to say that it doesn't allow you to progress as much or as quickly. And as soon as I started building this community around me in Colorado, it upped my playing so much, and playing with other people and learning how to listen. This was a huge thing of it. Learning how to listen to others and fit in. Even if you're leading, you still need to learn how to fit in if you haven't done it before. If it's your song and you have a band behind you, oh, I'm leading, so they're just going to follow me. Like, it's not really how it works. Not if you actually want bandmates who care about your music. Like they're going to be good musicians, hopefully, and they're going to want to play in time, and they're going to want to know the changes. They're not going to want to just follow you as you ramble along. So there's a lot to that. And I went through this little dip in that when I left Colorado, when I left my old band, before I moved to North Carolina, and even actually the first year or so, because my family and we were living way out in the country on this little horse farm. We hardly had any young people friends. I didn't have hardly any musicians I was playing with at that time. I was just going inward. And that was, like I said too earlier, it's another season, and it was beautiful. And I got to write a ton of this music that I'm playing now, but I got stuck in a rut again. And it was just kind of, I hit this plateau and I couldn't seem to go up from there. And when I moved into the city, moved to Nashville, formed this actual band with my bandmates and started playing with other people and playing out and meeting others, once again, it just kicked me into overdrive and made me realize, like, man, there's just so much more to this whole thing. Even if it's my music, even if it's my style, there's so much more to it than just, hiding out and playing what you're used to. Like, you can expand on those, whatever those comfort zones are. And when I started making friends, a lot through this podcast and stuff, and I realized that not only is your ability fluid, like the things that you do, like we can learn so much so quickly, even if we don't think we can. It's just being around other people. It's an osmosis. Like, you just pick it up. Sometimes you just get lit on fire, and you follow it, and all of a sudden you've been sitting in your room creating for 5-6 hours straight, and the time just flies by and you don't even know what's going on. And those moments happen a lot from other people. And on top of that, on top of your own, personal ability and stuff, your preferences start to loosen up a bit. Your narrow-minded focus of what is your music, what is your style, what is your voice, and that's something I come up against all the time. Like, I lock myself into a box. I say, this, these are my influences. This is the music that I want to create. And, here I go. And I start writing, and I do, a couple songs in there. But inevitably, I hear something that is outside of that catches my ear. And I'm like, man, that's amazing. Another band or another, some poetry or, I get a lot of inspiration from reading, actually, from a lot of books, novels, and, any kind of literature really that is along the line of things that I generally get into. I'll get inspired musically from good writing. Like, it's really crazy. It's like this synesthesia. From good art too. Like, sometimes if I see good art it's just incredible, it'll influence me musically. And when those moments happen, I just I crack open that shell and start to leak out a little bit. And lately that's happening a lot to me with different bands I've been getting into and different musicians that I've been meeting and stuff, where they're playing their style. It's oftentimes not my style, but it's so good and it's so genuine for them that it inspires me, and I'll start fiddling around with a new tuning or a new progression or just a new sound, like a new color scape. That's kind of how I work. I don't deal in theoretical terms at all with music. Like, I mean, the basics, obvious, things that we all use for writing. But for me, it's more like these shades and tones and colors and feelings that I'll pick up. Like, oh, that's a nice like bluesy feel in that song. Like, I want to invite like a bluesy element into this next song, and try and allow myself to do that and not worry about it, not worry about what my other music sounds like or what I did in the past. And just kind of opening up to the possibility that's in front of me right now. And that really wouldn't happen if it wasn't for community. And I'm so grateful for all these people that I've been meeting and hanging out with and interviewing and playing with. And we played a show last weekend, last Sunday at the Gray Eagle. We opened up for my friend Asher, who was also on the podcast. And Chris Rosser was there, who was also on the podcast. And a couple other people there were on the podcast. It was super cool, that connection that I'm making with people, the community. But just that, like, Asher's music and Chris's music and all these other musicians, like hearing those different styles, like very different than what I play. But just being in close proximity to that, getting out, listening to it in person, live, getting that emotional contact, and letting it just permeate and just let it fill me and not worry about my sound or, my style or anything like that. I mean, I usually come home and I'll just sit down, pick up an instrument, pick up a pencil and pen or piece of paper, whatever it is, and just start channeling what I feel. Sometimes I'll just write about it. I'll just write about the sound that I want to create. Like, ooh, I want to do this. I want to go towards this band that I heard, or this song from this band, and remember that, or remember that chord progression or whatever. And it's honestly here. It's not plagiarism for me. I can't possibly play what somebody else plays, like their style. It just, my thing is writing. Like, I don't want to note for note, line for line match somebody. It just doesn't work for me. But if I learn a couple songs in a different genre, it always ends up influencing me in some way, even if it's a very subtle way. So yeah, that's something that having community, I think that's really important. Then the other half of that, I think, is building community or being the community for others, which, it might sound like the same thing, but what I'm trying to say is, a lot of times we as creative people, we have different seasons, we have different times where we're up and down. And those times when we're really up and we're really creating and we're really on fire, it could be weeks, could be months, could be years, it could be days, I don't know. But I have these spells where I go through, usually it's a matter of months, like a couple months in a row where I'm on fire. And that usually builds up to a larger scale of things. Like these last 3 years, I've really had this creative energy going, this last year in particular. But in that time, there's, ebbs and flows. But when I'm in that space, I try and honor that for myself, be honest about it and, say like, yes, I'm really creating here. I'm on a roll, and that's good. But I also try and share that with people. And it's kind of hard to explain, I guess, but for me, if I can just get out there, like, and it's hard. I have a family, I work, I do the podcast, I have a band, I play almost most weekends, and I'm very busy. I have a lot going on. We just got a puppy. Life is insane, but it's beautiful. But I still, like, when I'm in those creative modes, I try and get out. I, hang out with other people or go to concerts or go to parties or whatever it is, and, bring an instrument with me and connect with other people and try and share that inspiration. even if you don't think you're like superb at what you do, if you show up and you're on fire and you're sharing your creation with anyone who's willing to look at it, like somebody is going to be inspired by that. Maybe somebody less talented, maybe even somebody more talented who just doesn't have that energy going. When they see that, like I said, it's osmosis. I have a couple friends right now that they've had kind of dry spells in their lives, and for different reasons, whatever it is, but they're actually very creative people and very talented people, but they just were in this dry spell. And I have really I've had the pleasure of being that fire for other people a couple times. And, sometimes you don't recognize it, but other times you definitely do. And when you can be that for people, it doesn't take much. It just takes you being honest and being open and being willing to share. And if you can do that for people, man, it's beautiful, because not only is it great for the sake of them, them learning something, them picking something up, but it's also great that you can connect in that way. And it's reciprocal, that energy. Like when you know that you've inspired somebody and they get inspired from it and you see their inspiration, it turns around and inspires you. And I know this from personal experience, and it's such a special thing. And that's what community is all about. It's like giving your gifts away freely. It's a barter system, really. It's not just giving them away. You're lending something that you love and you're passionate about to somebody else, and in return, they're giving back, whether it's gratitude or whether it's their own creativity or they're picking you up when you're down. It's simple stuff. People talk about it all the time with emotions and love and whatever it is. We all understand on some level, but it really does translate into creative expression. I've seen it firsthand, and it's absolutely magical. So I highly encourage you, if you have that, or if you don't, just connect with community. That's all I'm saying. Find creative people, good-hearted people, not people that are just talented just because they're really good. If they're pretentious and, grumpy, those kind of people that are awesome, but you don't really want to hang out with them because all they want to do is shred over, over whatever music you're trying to play, and they're not listening to you and they don't really care. They know they're better, that kind of thing. Like, forget those people. They're great and they can have that, but it's not really benefiting anyone but themselves. If you can find those genuine people that are open and full of their own light and their own love, that is not just in a hippy dippy way. I'm talking like real, genuine human connection, and talented, like also talented. Like these two things exist. They're not mutually exclusive. They definitely exist together, and you can find them. They're out there, because I have found them time and time again, and I'm so grateful for those connections. So go look. If you have the energy, go find people to share it with. If you don't, go find people who are on fire and, try and catch some of their sparks and get yourself going, because it really does work. Anyway, that is my rant for this week. I hope it means something to you guys. I hope you can connect with it in some way, and I hope you can actually get out there and do that, make those connections. So yeah, I wanted to share a song this week, a new song, but it would have fit this situation really well, but it's just really not ready to be recorded, and I just don't feel like putting it out there. I hate to be like self-conscious about it with this podcast being all about authenticity, openness, and all that, but I realized that like putting out so much new material without it being finished, and like not even like I don't even have any like rights to it, basically, it's probably not the greatest idea. Not to say that I'm not going to continue doing it, because I will, but just certain songs I'm going to be a little more intelligent about it, if you will. So I'm gonna include this song from my band's album, from Life Like Water, just the title track on it, and I hope you guys enjoy, and I hope that it keeps you rolling, makes your weekend a little bit fresher. So thank you guys so much for listening. If you guys want to support the podcast, please, please, please go over to iTunes, leave a rating and review, share it with your friends, share it on your wall, take a screenshot, whatever it is. I would be so grateful if you could do something to help support this podcast. And getting exposure right now is probably one of the biggest things that I could ask for, because I need it, and it really helps to get other people, get their attention and get people listening, which helps circulate the whole thing. So I would be really grateful if you could do that, any of those things. Also, check out creativeawakeningnow.com, sign up for my mailing list. And yeah, I hope any of that stuff won't be too hard, and you can take a moment out of your day to do that, support this show. That is it. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Definitely thanks for checking it out. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye. Lessons that fall in the morning rain. Catch them in buckets and jars with the warm born of autumn's reverie, body warm as copper candlesticks, eyes of honey, earth and evergreen, legs of twisted serpent dream, conscience clear as watermelon ripe, heart a swollen sweet potato vine, here and now she chases fireflies, empty sky a quiet mind. Empty sky, a quiet mind. Clouds of thought, days on and rhymes. Empty sky, a quiet mind. Of our simplicity, singing songs with nature's symphony. Child lives a sacred mystery, muddy boots and scarlet cheek, conscience clear as watermelon ripe, heart a swollen sweet potato vine, here and now she chases fireflies, empty sky a quiet mind. Empty sky, a quiet mind. Clouds of thought, days on and rhyme. Empty sky.